The crimson paint splattered across her white blouse like blood on fresh snow, but what happened next would turn Riverside High's most vicious bullies into the hunted. When Miss Harper flipped that projector switch at 8:45 p.m. during the parent showcase, she didn't just expose their facade, exposed a toxic culture that had protected male athletes for decades. The quarterback who'd orchestrated the attack never saw it coming, and neither did the principal who'd been covering for him. Before I dive into this incredible story of courage versus corruption, I want to take a quick moment to thank you for being here. Your support, whether it's a like, a comment sharing your own experiences, or even hitting that thanks button below, genuinely helps these stories reach people who need to hear them. Every small contribution allows me to keep uncovering and sharing these powerful tales of everyday heroes standing up to injustice. If this story resonates with you or reminds you of a time when someone stood up for what's right, I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Now, let me tell you about Miss Rachel Harper and the night she changed everything. Miss Rachel Harper stood before her empty classroom at 7:30 a.m., inhaling the familiar scent of acrylic paint and possibility. At 28, she'd left behind a lucrative career as a digital artist in San Francisco to return to her hometown of Millbrook, Colorado. The decision had cost her $60,000 annually, but teaching art had always been her true calling. Now, staring at the bare walls of room 237 in Riverside High School, she felt both excitement and trepidation. "Fresh meat," a voice drawled from the doorway. Rachel turned to see a broad-shouldered young man leaning against the frame, his Letterman jacket displaying the number 12. His sandy hair was perfectly styled, and his blue eyes held a predatory gleam that made her instinctively straighten her spine. "I'm Connor Walsh," he said, not bothering to add student or any form of respect to his introduction. "QB1, my dad basically owns this town. Nice to meet you. Connor, I'm Miss Harper, your new art teacher." Rachel kept her voice neutral, professional. She'd dealt with entitled students before, though something about this one set off every warning bell in her head. Connor's smirk widened. "Art teacher, huh? The last one didn't last 3 months. Said something about hostile work environment or whatever." He pushed off the doorframe, taking a step into her space. "Just thought you should know art isn't exactly a priority here. Football is, and I don't take art. That's unfortunate." Rachel replied, refusing to step back. "Art has a way of revealing truth that sports sometimes misses." His eyes narrowed. "Truth? The only truth that matters here is winning state championships. Maybe stick to finger painting with the nerds and leave the real world to us." After he left, Rachel found her hands trembling slightly. She'd researched Riverside High before accepting the position, knew about their stellar football program and the Walsh family's influence. Connor's father, Mitchell Walsh, owned 3 of the largest businesses in Millbrook and sat on the school board, but she hadn't expected such blatant intimidation on her first day. The morning classes passed without major incident. Her freshmen seemed eager, if shy. The sophomores showed promise, but during lunch, as she organized supplies in the art room storage closet, she overheard voices in the hallway. "New art teacher's kind of hot. Not gonna lie." She recognized Connor's voice immediately. "Bro, she's like almost 30. Another male voice responded. "That's ancient. Perfect age." Connor laughed. "Old enough to know better. Young enough to still look good. Bet I could get her fired by Halloween. Want to place bets?" "How?" the other voice asked. "Easy. Few complaints about inappropriate behavior. Maybe stage something compromising. Dad'll handle the rest." These idealistic teacher types always have secrets. Rachel's blood ran cold. She pressed herself against the closet wall, holding her breath until their voices faded down the hall. This wasn't just typical teenage bravado. This was a coordinated plan to destroy her career before it began. That afternoon, she had her advanced placement art class 12 students who'd chosen to pursue art seriously. Among them sat Madison Chen, a quiet girl with extraordinary talent, and James Rodriguez, whose sculpture work showed real promise. But she also noticed 2 football players in the back, Tyler Brooks and Ethan Marsh. both wearing their Letterman jackets despite the warm September weather. "Welcome to AP Art," Rachel began, trying to project confidence she didn't entirely feel. "This year, we're going to push boundaries, explore new mediums, and create work that matters. Our first project will be—" "Will it help us get laid?" Tyler interrupted, causing Ethan to snicker. Rachel paused, meeting his gaze steadily. "If you're looking for easy credits, Mr. Brooks, you're in the wrong class. Op art requires dedication, vulnerability, and actual work." "Vulnerability?" Ethan mocked in a high-pitched voice. "What are we? In therapy?" "Art is therapy, in a way," Rachel responded calmly. "It requires honesty, something that might be challenging for those used to hiding behind helmets and shoulder pads." Tyler's face darkened. "You calling us cowards? I'm calling you to rise to a challenge. Question is, are you capable of it?" The tension in the room was palpable. Madison Chen shrunk in her seat, while James Rodriguez looked between the football players and their new teacher with wide eyes. After class, Madison lingered. "Miss Harper," she said quietly, "you should be careful. Connor Walsh, he has a history." "What kind of history?" Rachel asked. Though she suspected she knew, Madison glanced around nervously. "The last art teacher, Miss Peterson, she tried to fail him for never showing up. Then suddenly there were rumors about her and a student, photos that looked compromising. They were fake. Everyone knew it, but she left anyway. And nobody did anything? Against the Walshes?" Madison shook her head. "His dad owns half the school board. His mom runs the PTA. Connor's untouchable." That evening, Rachel stayed late, transforming her classroom. She hung inspirational quotes, arranged still life stations, and created a small gallery space for student work. She was so absorbed that she didn't hear the footsteps until it was too late. Working late. "Miss Harper?" She spun around to find Connor Walsh standing in her doorway, backlit by the hallway fluorescents. Behind him stood Tyler, Ethan, and two other football players she didn't recognize. "Connor," she kept her voice steady despite her racing heart. "School hours are over. You shouldn't be here." Football practice ran late. He sauntered into the room, his entourage following. "Thought we'd check out what the new teacher's been up to. Quite the little nest you're building. I'd appreciate if you'd leave," Rachel said firmly. "If you have concerns about the art program, we can discuss them during school hours." Connor picked up a palette knife from her desk, testing its edge with his thumb. "You know what your problem is. You don't understand the ecosystem here. Riverside High runs on tradition, honor, respect for those who've earned it. Respect is mutual. Connor, it's earned, not inherited." His jaw tightened. "My family built this town. My grandfather donated the money for this entire wing of the school. You're literally standing in the Walsh Memorial Arts Center." Then he'd probably be disappointed to know his grandson is using his legacy to intimidate teachers. The silence that followed was deafening. Tyler and Ethan exchanged glances, while the other two players shifted uncomfortably. Connor set down the palette knife with deliberate slowness. "You have no idea who you're messing with. This feminist, girl power bullshit might have worked in San Francisco, but Millbrook has its own rules. Is that a threat?" "It's a reality check." He moved closer. Close enough that she could smell his expensive cologne mixed with sweat from practice. "Ask yourself this. Is teaching finger painting really worth destroying your whole career? Because I promise you, Miss Harper, I can make that happen." After they left, Rachel sank into her desk chair, hands shaking. She pulled out her phone and started recording a voice memo, documenting everything that had just happened. If Connor Walsh wanted a war, she'd make sure she had ammunition. The next few weeks fell into an uneasy pattern. Her classes went well. The students, for the most part, seemed engaged and eager to learn. Madison Chen's work grew more confident with each passing day. And even some of the initially skeptical students began to show enthusiasm, but there were constant disruptions. Tyler and Ethan would make crude gestures when she turned to write on the board. Anonymous notes appeared on her desk with inappropriate messages. Someone kept accidentally spilling paint near her supplies. Rachel documented everything, every incident, every witnesses, every pattern. She installed a small security camera in her classroom, technically against school policy, but she'd rather face those consequences than be blindsided by false accusations. Rachel had stayed after school to prepare for the next day's pottery demonstration. She was wedging clay at the back table when she heard the art room door open and close. The lock clicked. Her blood ran cold. "Hello, Miss Harper." Connor's voice was different now, darker, more dangerous. He wasn't alone. Tyler, Ethan, and 3 other football players spread out, blocking her path to the door. "Unlock that door immediately," Rachel commanded, proud that her voice didn't shake. "Or what? You'll give us detention?" Connor laughed. "See? Here's the thing. Tomorrow's the biggest game of my career. Scouts from 5 different colleges will be there. And you gave Madison Chen an A on that project about toxic masculinity in sports culture." Rachel's mind raced. Madison's project had been brilliant, a series of paintings depicting the pressure and violence inherent in high school football culture. She'd used no names, no identifying features. But the message was clear. Madison earned that grade, Rachel said. Her work was exceptional. Her work was a hit piece on our program, Tyler snarled. Coach saw it. Said it makes us look like a bunch of roided-out assholes. "If the shoe fits," Rachel muttered before she could stop herself. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Connor picked up a container of red paint from the supply shelf. "You know what? I'm done playing nice. Done with warnings." He unscrewed the lid slowly, deliberately. "Maybe you need a more visceral lesson about respect." "Connor, think about what you're doing," Rachel said, backing toward the kiln room. "This is assault. You could lose everything, your scholarships, your future. Who's going to believe you?" He stepped closer. Paint container in hunt. 6 upstanding student athletes versus 1 teacher who's been here. What? A month? Plus, didn't you know? There's no security cameras in the art wing. Budget cuts. Rachel's hand found her phone in her pocket. Pressing record. "Please, Connor, just put the paint down and leave. We can forget this happened." "Forget?" Connor's laugh was ugly. "No, Miss Harper, you're going to remember this. You're going to remember that in Millbrook, we protect what's ours. And if you can't play by our rules..." He drew his arm back. Time seemed to slow. Rachel saw the paint container leave his hand, saw the crimson liquid arc through the air. She tried to dodge, but in the confined space between the tables, there was nowhere to go. The paint hit her square in the chest, exploding across her white blouse, splattering her face, her hair, the wall behind her. The room erupted in laughter. Tyler high-fived Ethan, someone he couldn't see, who threw the paint in her eyes through a second container. This one blue that burst across her skirt. "Look at that," Connor crowed. "Performance art? Should we call it teacher learns her place?" Rachel stood frozen, paint dripping from her clothes, her hair pooling at her feet. But beneath the shock, something else was building. Not fear, not humiliation. She wiped paint from her eyes with deliberate calm, then looked directly at Connor. "You have no idea what you've just done." "Oh yeah? What are you gonna do? Finger paint a complaint?" Rachel smiled then, and something in her expression made the laughter die. "Connor, did you know that the kiln room has a separate security system? State requirement for the expensive equipment. It's been recording everything." The blood drained from Connor's face. "You're lying." "Am I?" Rachel pulled out her phone. "Still recording," and held it up. "Or maybe it's this. Either way, you just committed assault. On camera. 3 days before the biggest game of your life. Give me that phone." Connor lunged forward, but Rachel was ready. She darted to the side, slipping in paint, but managing to keep her feet. "Too late," she said, "already uploaded to the cloud. But here's what's going to happen. You're going to clean up this mess, every drop of paint, and then you're going to leave. And we're going to pretend this didn't happen. Like hell. Or," Rachel continued, her voice hard as steel, "I send this video to the police, the school board, and every college recruiter in the state. Your choice?" For a moment, the room was silent except for the drip of paint. Then Tyler spoke up. "Connor, Man, maybe we should— Shut up! Connor's face was purple with rage. She's bluffing. She wouldn't dare. She knows what we could do to her. What you could do, Rachel laughed. Actually laughed. Connor, you just handed me everything I need to not only end your football career but probably land you in jail. So please, tell me more about what you think you can do to me. The standoff lasted another 30 seconds before Ethan broke. I'm out. Man, I'm not catching a charge for this. He headed for the door. Get back here, Connor shouted. But the spell was broken. One by one, the other players filed out, leaving only Connor and Tyler. This isn't over, Connor hissed. You think you've won? My dad will. Your dad will what? Protect his son from a felony assault charge? With video evidence? With witnesses? Rachel shook her head. You played yourself. Connor, all that privilege, all that protection. And you threw it away because you couldn't handle a woman who wouldn't bow down to you. Connor's fists clenched, and for a moment Rachel thought he might actually hit her. Then Tyler grabbed his arm. Dude, we need to go. Now. After they left, Rachel locked the door and slumped against it. She was covered in paint, shaking with adrenaline, but she'd won this round. She looked at her phone, still recording. The video was clear. Audio perfect. Connor Walsh had just made the biggest mistake of his life. But she knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. She spent the next hour cleaning herself up as best she could in the art room sink. Then drove home in her paint-stained clothes. Her apartmenta, modest one-bedroom above the old bookstore downtown, felt like a sanctuary. She immediately backed up the video to 3 different cloud services, emailed copies to her personal lawyer, and made a physical copy on a flash drive that she hid in her freezer. Then she sat down and wrote out everything that had happened since her first day at Riverside High. Every threat, every incident, every witness. By the time she finished, it was past midnight, and she had a 12-page document that painted a clear picture of systematic harassment and intimidation. The next morning, Friday, she arrived at school early despite having barely slept. She wore her most professional outfit, a charcoal gray suit that said, "Take me seriously," and walked into Principal Davidson's office at 7 a.m. sharp. Robert Davidson was a thin, nervous man in his 50s who always looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. His assistant tried to wave her off, saying he was busy, but Rachel walked past her and knocked firmly on his door. "Miss Harper?" Davidson looked up from his coffee, clearly startled. "Is everything all right? You look intense." "We need to talk about Connor Walsh," Rachel said, closing the door behind her. "And the assault that occurred in my classroom yesterday evening." Davidson's coffee mug froze halfway to his lips. "Assault? That's a very serious accusation." "It's not an accusation. It's a fact." Rachel pulled out her phone and played the video. She watched Davidson's face grow paler with each passing second. When it finished, he set down his mug with shaking hands. "Miss Harper, surely there's been some misunderstanding. Boys will be boys. And Connor is under a lot of pressure with the game tonight." "Principal Davidson," Rachel interrupted. "6 male students locked me in a classroom and assaulted me with paint while making explicitly gendered threats. That's not boys being boys. That's criminal behavior. Now, let's not be hasty," Davidson said, sweat beading on his forehead. "I'm sure if we all sat down together, we could work this out. Connor's a good kid from a good family. One mistake shouldn't ruin his future." "One mistake?" Rachel pulled out her documentation. "This is weeks of harassment, threats, and intimidation, culminating in assault. And you want to sweep it under the rug because his daddy owns half the town?" Davidson's face hardened. "Miss Harper, you're new here. You don't understand how things work. The Walsh family has been part of this community for generations. They've donated millions to this school. Without their support, you're suggesting I should accept being assaulted because the perpetrator's family has money?" "I'm suggesting," Davidson said carefully, "that sometimes the greater good requires compromise. Think of all the students who benefit from the Walsh family's generosity. The scholarships, the new gym, the culture of entitlement that allows star athletes to terrorize teachers without consequence." Rachel stood up. I'm filing a police report today. I wanted to give you the chance to handle this internally first, but clearly that was a mistake. Davidson shot to his feet. Miss Harper, please, let's discuss this rationally. The game tonight, if Connor can't play, we'll lose our chance at state. The whole town is counting on this Clodian data. Then maybe the town should reconsider its priorities. Rachel headed for the door. I have classes to teach. I trust you'll be conducting a proper investigation? Miss Harper, Rachel, wait. Davidson's voice was desperate now. You file that report, and things will get very difficult for you here. The Walshes have connections you can't imagine. Your contract is up for review in spring. Rachel turned back, her eyes blazing. Are you threatening me, Principal Davidson? Because I'm recording this conversation too. Davidson's mouth snapped shut. That's what I thought. Rachel said, Good morning, Principal. I'll see you at the homecoming game tonight. I wouldn't miss it for the world. She left his office feeling both vindicated and terrified. She just declared war on the most powerful family in Millbrook. But as she walked to her classroom, she noticed something different. Students in the hallway were looking at her, really looking at her. Some with curiosity, some with what might have been respect. Miss Harper, Madison Chen ran up to her, eyes wide. Is it true? Did Connor really? Madison? I can't discuss. Rachel paused. The rumor mill at Riverside was legendary. By now, half the school probably knew something had happened. Let's just say certain students are learning that actions have consequences. Madison's face lit up. So the video everyone's talking about? Video? Rachel kept her expression neutral. Someone in my first period said Tyler Brooks was bragging that Connor put the feminist in her place last night. But then Ethan Marsh told him to shut up. Said there were cameras, so the boys were already turning on each other. Good. Rachel's morning classes buzzed with barely contained energy. Students kept glancing at her, whispering among themselves. She taught as normally as possible, but her mind was racing. She'd lit a few Seth. Question was how big the explosion would be. During her lunch break, she drove to the Millbrook police station. It was a small building, just 6 officers for the whole town, and Rachel knew at least half of them probably had kids on the football team. But she had to create an official record. Officer Janet Mills, a stern woman in her 40s, took her statement professionally. She watched the video with a deepening frown. Miss Harper, she said when it was over, this is clear assault. No question, but I need to warn you, pressing charges against Connor Walsh is going to make your life very difficult. More difficult than being assaulted in my workplace? Rachel asked. Mills sighed. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm saying be prepared. Mitchell Walsh owns the largest law firm in 3 counties. They'll come at you hard. Let them come, Rachel said. I have the truth on my side. Mills gave her a long look. Sometimes the truth isn't enough. But for what it's worth, I'm glad someone's finally standing up to that family. Connor's been getting away with crap for years. He's done this before? Not this, exactly. But there have been incidents. Girls who suddenly didn't want to press charges, property damage that got blamed on others. His daddy always makes it go away. Mills printed out Rachel's statement. But video evidence? That's harder to disappear. Rachel returned to school to find chaos. Students were clustered in hallways, talking in hushed, excited voices. She caught fragments. Can't play tonight? Police were here. My dad says the Walshes are furious. In her classroom, she found Principal Davidson waiting with Mitchell Walsh himself. Connor's father was a large man with the same blue eyes as his son. But whereas Connor's held arrogance, Mitchell's held cold calculation. Miss Harper, Mitchell said without preamble, I understand there's been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding. Mr. Walsh, your son assaulted me. It's on video. Videos can be edited. Context can be manipulated. Mitchell pulled out his phone. I'm prepared to offer you $100,000 to resign quietly and drop all charges. You can start fresh somewhere else. New questions asked. Rachel felt her jaw drop. Are you seriously trying to bribe me? I'm offering you a generous severance package to avoid a messy situation that benefits no one. Mitchell's voice was smooth. Practiced. Think about it. That's more than 3 years' salary. You're young. You can teach anywhere. Why put yourself through a legal battle you can't win? Because your son needs to face consequences for his actions. Mitchell's expression darkened. My son is 18 years old with his whole future ahead of him. One moment of poor judgment shouldn't define his life. It wasn't one moment. It was weeks of harassment culminating in assault. And how many other moments of poor judgment have you covered up for him? Be very careful. Miss Harper. All pretense of civility dropped from Mitchell's voice. You have no idea what you're dealing with. I've destroyed careers of people far more established than you. One phone call, and you'll never teach again. Mr. Walsh. Principal Davidson interjected nervously. Perhaps we should. Shut up, Robert. Mitchell snapped. Miss Harper, I'm trying to be reasonable. Take the money, leave town. Everyone wins. Everyone except your son's future victims. Rachel said, how long do you plan to clean up his messes? What happens when he does this in college? In the workplace? When daddy's money can't fix it? Mitchell stood, looming over her. There's nothing my money can't fix. Last chance. Miss Harper, $100,000. Or I destroy you. Rachel stood as well, meeting his gaze steadily. Do your worst. After they left, Rachel found herself shaking. She'd just turned down more money than she'd ever seen, challenged the most powerful man in town, but she knew she'd made the right choice. The rest of the day passed in a blur. Students were pulled from her classes for questioning. She saw police officers in the hallways. The energy in the school was electric, like the moments before a thunderstorm. As the final bell rang, Madison Chen approached her desk. Miss Harper, I wanted you to know, a lot of us support you. What Connor did was wrong, and we're tired of him and his friends thinking they own this place. Thank you, Madison. That means more than you know. Are you coming to the game tonight? Rachel hesitated. She'd told Davidson she would, but now, I'm not sure that's a good idea. Please come, Madison said urgently. We're planning something. A show of support? The whole art club, drama club, even some of the band kids. We're done being silent. After Madison left, Rachel sat in her empty classroom, weighing her options. Going to the game would be walking into hostile territory, but hiding would send the wrong message. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. You destroyed my son's future. You'll pay for this. Mitchell Walsh. She screenshot the message and forwarded it to Officer Mills. If they wanted to escalate, she'd document every threat. As she prepared to leave, she found a note slipped under her door. Check your car before you drive. A friend. Her blood ran cold. She called Officer Mills, who sent an officer to escort her to the parking lot. Sure enough, they found her tires slashed, brake lines cut. Jesus, the officer muttered. This is attempted murder. Can you prove who did it? Rachel asked. Though she knew the answer, no cameras in this lot. But we'll investigate. He looked at her seriously. Miss Harper, you need to be careful. This is escalating beyond harassment. Rachel called an Uber, her mind racing. They'd tried to bribe her, threaten her, and now potentially kill her, all to protect a violent, entitled boy from consequences. She made a decision. If they wanted to play dirty, she'd play smart. That evening, she dressed carefully, jeans and a Riverside High t-shirt she'd bought her first week. Her hair pulled back, minimal makeup. She wanted to look like she belonged. Just another teacher supporting her school. The stadium was packed. The entire town turned out for the biggest game of the year. Rachel slipped in with a group of teachers, trying to remain inconspicuous. She found a seat in the section where Madison had said supporters would gather. The atmosphere was tense. She could see people pointing at her, whispering. Some looked sympathetic, others hostile. The divide in the town was visible: those who believed in accountability versus those who worshipped at the altar of football. Then she saw him, Connor Walsh, in his number 12 jersey, warming up on the field as if nothing had happened. Her assault report hadn't been enough to bench him, not with Daddy's lawyers already at work. But as the national anthem began to play, something unexpected happened. Madison Chen and about 30 other students stood up in the student section. They turned their backs to the field and held up signs. Protect students, not predators. Assault is not a game. Justice for Ms. Harper. The crowd erupted. Some cheered the students. Others booed. Security moved toward them. But more students stood braiding.com, pulling out signs. Soon, nearly a quarter of the student section had joined the protest. Rachel felt tears prick her eyes. She wasn't alone. The game began. But the protest had rattled Connor. His first pass went wide. His second was intercepted. By halftime, Riverside was down by 14 points, and Connor had thrown 3 interceptions. During halftime, Rachel was heading to the concession stand when she felt a hand grab her arm. She spun to find Mitchell Walsh. His face twisted with rage. "You did this?" he snarled. "You turned them against my boy? Your boy did this to himself." Rachel yanked her arm free. "I just refuse to let him get away with it. He can't focus. Those kids with their signs, you orchestrated this." "I didn't orchestrate anything. But maybe if your son is so easily distracted by calls for justice, he shouldn't be playing." Mitchell raised his hand, and for a moment Rachel thought he might actually hit her. Then flashbulbs went off. Someone was photographing them. Mitchell's hand dropped. "This isn't over," he hissed. "You've made an enemy you can't afford." As he stormed off, Rachel realized Madison Chen was standing nearby with her phone out. "Got that on video?" "Miss Harper, just in case." The second half was a disaster for Riverside. Connor, clearly rattled, threw 2 more interceptions. The usually supportive crowd began to turn a. When he overthrew a wide-open receiver in the end zone. Even the die-hard fans groaned. With 5 minutes left and Riverside down by 21, something shifted in the stadium. A chant started in the student section, "Justice for Harper! Justice for Harper!" It spread like wildfire. Soon, half the stadium was chanting while the other half tried to drown them out with "Defense! Defense!" Connor, preparing to take a snap, looked up at the crowd. His eyes found Rachel in the stands. And for a moment, their gazes locked. She saw not the arrogant boy who'd assaulted her, but a young man realizing his actions had consequences his daddy couldn't fix. The ball was snapped. Connor dropped back, looking for a receiver. But the offensive line, perhaps distracted by the chaos in the stands, collapsed. Connor was sacked hard, the ball flying loose. Mountain View recovered and ran it back for a touchdown. The game was over, even with time left on the clock. As the final whistle blew, sealing Riverside's worst loss in a decade, the crowd erupted into chaos. Supporters and detractors of Rachel squared off, shouting at each other. Security struggled to maintain order. Rachel slipped out quickly, but not before she heard someone shout, "This is what happens when we let feminists destroy our traditions." Another voice responded, "This is what happens when we let bullies hide behind those traditions." She pulled out her laptop and began composing an email to the school board, attaching all her documentation, the videos, everything. If Riverside High wouldn't protect its teachers, she'd force their hand. As she typed, she thought about the presentation she'd planned for next week, a showcase of student work, including Madison's powerful series on toxic masculinity. She'd intended it as a celebration of art. Now, it might become something more. A statement, a stand. Her phone rang, unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered. "Miss Harper?" The voice was young, scared. "This is Ethan. Ethan Marsh. From last night." Rachel straightened. "Ethan? I want to come forward. What Connor did was wrong. What we did was wrong. I have texts, group chats, where he planned it all, where he bragged about what he was going to do to you. Why are you telling me this?" "Because my little sister is in your freshman class. She came home talking about how amazing you are, how you're the first teacher who made her feel like her art mattered, and I helped try to destroy you. I can't live with that. Ethan, if you come forward, you'll face consequences too. I know, but maybe that's what needs to happen. Maybe we all need to face what we've become." His voice cracked. Will you help me do the right thing? Rachel closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the moment. One boy choosing accountability could change everything. Yes, Ethan, I'll help you. As she hung up, she realized this was far from over. The paint had been thrown. The projector moment was yet to come, and Connor Walsh's final reckoning awaited, but for tonight. In her small apartment above the bookstore, Rachel Harper had won a victory, not through revenge or violence, but by simply refusing to be silenced. The following Monday arrived with an autumn chill that seemed to mirror the cold tension gripping Riverside High. Rachel Harper walked through the main entrance at 7 a.m. to find the hallways buzzing with whispers and stolen glances. Someone had spray-painted "Harper equals Destroyer" across her classroom door in blood-red letters. "Don't worry, we've got maintenance coming," Principal Davidson said, appearing at her elbow like a nervous ghost. His face was haggard, stress etched in every line. "Miss Harper, the school board has called an emergency meeting for tonight. They want to discuss the situation." "The assault? You mean?" Rachel corrected, taking photos of the vandalism. "Yes." "Well," Davidson fidgeted with his tie, "Mitchell Walsh has hired a team of lawyers. They're claiming the video was doctored, that you provoked the boys, that—" "Principal Davidson," Rachel interrupted. Ethan Marsh came forward. "He has text messages, group chats, everything. Connor planned this assault for weeks." Davidson's face went white. "Ethan came forward? But he's one of your star players?" "Yes. Apparently, some people still have consciences." Rachel unlocked her vandalized door. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have an art showcase to prepare for." The showcase was scheduled for Thursday evening, a display of student work that parents, school board members, and community leaders traditionally attended. Rachel had bigger plans now. With Ethan's evidence and her own documentation, she was going to give Millbrook a presentation they'd never forget. Throughout Monday and Tuesday, the school felt like a powder keg. Connor Walsh still swaggered through the halls, but his usual entourage had dwindled. Tyler Brooks stuck by him, but others kept their distance. The loss against Mountain View had shaken the sacred foundation of Riverside football, and blame was flying in all directions. Wednesday morning, Rachel found Madison Chen waiting by her classroom with several other students: James Rodriguez, Sophie Williams from Drama Club, Marcus Johnson from Band, and surprisingly, Alyssa Walsh, Connor's younger sister. A sophomore with artistic talent her family ignored. "Miss Harper," Madison said, "we want to help with the showcase. Whatever you're planning, we're in." Rachel studied Alyssa carefully. "Are you sure about this, all of you?" Alyssa lifted her chin. So much like her brother, but with kindness in her eyes instead of cruelty. "My brother's been getting away with hurting people for years. My parents always cover for him. Someone needs to stop it. It could get ugly," Rachel warned. "Your family? My family is what's ugly," Alyssa said firmly. "I've watched them buy Connor out of every consequence since middle school. The girls he's hurt, and the kids he's bullied. Nobody ever stands up because they're scared of my father. But I'm done being complicit." Rachel felt a surge of admiration for this brave girl. "Okay, here's what we're going to do." She outlined her plan. The showcase would proceed as normal at first. Parents would view student artwork, enjoy refreshments, and see the creative growth of their children. But at 8:45 p.m. precisely, when everyone was gathered in the main display area, Rachel would flip a switch. "I've prepared a special presentation," she explained, "a multimedia piece about truth, consequences, and the cost of silence. Every piece of evidence, every testimony, every moment of Connor's harassment campaign will be displayed on the walls via the overhead projectors like a surround sound experience. But visual," Marcus said, "ice lighting up. I can help with the technical setup, and I'll make sure everyone important is there." Sophie added, "My mom's on the PTA. I'll tell her there's a special announcement about the art program's future." They spent the rest of Wednesday in covert preparation. Marcus and Rachel tested the projector system, ensuring every surface in the main hall could display images. Madison and James created powerful artwork responding to themes of justice and accountability. Alyssa, heartbreakingly, contributed a series of sketches showing the brother she wished Connor could have been kind. Protective, using his strength to lift others up instead of tear them down. Thursday morning, Ethan Marsh was escorted from his first period class by police. By lunch, the news had spread he'd provided evidence of Connor's premeditated assault and was cooperating fully with authorities. Connor's face, when Rachel glimpsed him in the hallway, was no longer arrogant but afraid. "You turned my best friend against me?" Connor cornered her during her prep period. Chula flanking him. "Ethan's lying to save his own ass. Ethan's telling the truth to save his soul." Rachel replied calmly, "There's a difference. My dad will destroy him. Destroy all of you." But the threat sounded hollow now. "Despérate. Your dad can try," Rachel said. "But the truth has a way of surviving even the best lawyers." "Miss Harper." Mitchell's voice cut through the ambient noise. "Interesting timing for a showcase, don't you think? Right after you've created such disruption. Art has always been about truth, Mr. Walsh." Rachel replied evenly, "Sometimes truth is disruptive." He leaned closer, his voice dropping. "Enjoy your little party. By Monday, you'll be gone, and this will all be forgotten. We'll see about that." At 8:40, Rachel moved to the small podium set up near the main wall. She tapped the microphone, drawing everyone's attention. "Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us to celebrate the incredible artistic growth of Riverside High's students. Before we conclude tonight, I have a special presentation, a multimedia piece about the power of truth in art and life." She saw Connor near the back, his face already flushing as he sensed what was coming. Tyler grabbed his arm, whispering urgently, but the exits were blocked by the crowd, everyone pressing forward to see. "Art," Rachel continued, "has always been humanity's way of processing difficult truths. Tonight, we explore one such truth, how silence enables violence, and how courage can break cycles of abuse." She pressed a button on her laptop. The room plunged into darkness. Then, suddenly, every wall came alive with projected images. The assault video played on the main wall, Connor throwing paint, his face twisted with rage, his voice clear. "Maybe you need a more visceral lesson about respect." Gasps echoed through the room. Someone screamed. The side walls showed screenshots of text messages. "Let's teach that bitch her place. Connor Walsh, I'll get the paint. You block the exits. Tyler Brooks, make sure no one's around. Don't need witnesses. Connor Walsh." The projections cycled through weeks of evidence, group chats planning harassment, photos of vandalized property, testimonies from former students about Connor's history of bullying. Alyssa's artwork appeared, to her sketches of a brother consumed by toxic masculinity, enabled by family wealth and willful blindness. "Turn it off," Mitchell Walsh roared, pushing through the crowd. "This is slander. I'll sue this school into bankruptcy." But Rachel wasn't done. The final projection showed a police report from 2 years ago, a girl named Emma Patterson who'd accused Connor of sexual assault at a house party. The case had been dropped after the Walshes paid an undisclosed settlement. "No." Patricia Walsh's cry cut through the chaos. She stared at the projection, face crumbling. "Mitchell, you said she was lying. You said it was just a misunderstanding. Shut it down." Mitchell lunged for Rachel's laptop, but Officer Mills and 2 other police officers stepped forward. "Mr. Walsh, step back," Mills commanded. "We're here on official business." The lights came back on. The crowd stood frozen, processing what they'd seen. Some parents pulled their children close. Others stared at the Walsh family with undisguised disgust. Connor stood paralyzed, his face white as paper. The kingdom his father had built around him was crumbling in real time. "Connor Walsh," Officer Mills announced, "you're under arrest for assault, conspiracy to commit assault, and intimidation of a witness." "No!" Connor tried to run, but there was nowhere to go. The officers moved efficiently, cuffing him as he struggled. "Dad, do something!" Mitchell started forward, but Mills blocked him. "Sir, I'd advise against interfering with an arrest. Your son's 18, he'll be tried as an adult. Tyler Brooks. Another officer called out, "You're also under arrest for conspiracy and assault." Tuller didn't run. He stood with his head down, shoulders shaking. His parents, standing nearby, looked stricken but not surprised. As the boys were led out, the hall erupted. Parents demanded answers. School board members huddled in urgent conference. Through it all, Rachel stood calm at the center of the storm she'd created. Madison Chen started clapping, slowly at first, then joined by James, Sophie, Marcus, and dozens of other students. The applause spread through the crowd, not universal, but strong and sustained. "This is what accountability looks like," Rachel said into the microphone. "This is what happens when we stop protecting predators and start protecting victims." Alyssa Walsh pushed through the crowd to reach her. Tears streamed down her face, but she held her head high. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for doing what my parents never would." The aftermath was swift and decisive. Mitchell Walsh's threats of lawsuits collapsed when 3 more victims came forward with evidence. The state attorney's office opened an investigation into years of cover-ups. Principal Davidson resigned, admitting he'd been pressured by the Walsh family to ignore complaints. Connor Walsh pled guilty to assault and received 18 months in juvenile detention plus 3 years probation. His football dreams evaporated overnight. Tyler Brooks received 6 months and community service. Both were expelled from Riverside High. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Ethan Marsh stood there, looking older than his 18 years but somehow lighter. "Miss Harper, I wanted to thank you for helping me do the right thing. You helped yourself." "Ethan, that took real courage." He shifted uncomfortably. "I'm transferring to Lincoln High. Fresh start. But I was wondering, could you write me a recommendation? I want to study art therapy in college. Help kids process trauma through creativity." Rachel smiled, feeling the full circle of impact. "I'd be honored." As Ethan left, Rachel turned back to her classroom. In 10 minutes, her advanced placement students would arrive, eager to create and explore. The room that had once been a battlefield was now a sanctuary. The projector that had exposed Connor Walsh's crimes now displayed student artwork during lessons. Every time she used it, Rachel remembered that night not with trauma, but with pride. She'd stood up to power, protected future victims, and shown her students that integrity matters more than intimidation. As her students filed in, chattering excitedly about their projects, Rachel smiled. She'd come to Riverside High to teach art. She'd ended up teaching something far more valuable: the power of truth, the importance of accountability, and the courage to stand up when standing up seems impossible. The red paint was long gone, washed away like the Walsh family's influence, but the lessons remained, vivid and permanent as any masterpiece. "Good morning, artists," Rachel greeted her students. "Today, we're going to talk about how art can change the world. And I have the perfect example to share with you." She clicked on the projector, ready to teach not just technique, but transformation. The same tool that had brought down a bully would now lift up the next generation of truth-tellers. Justice, like art, was all about perspective. And Rachel Harper had helped an entire town see clearly for the first time